in bigger scale, right? So probably you have the same type of trends in Belgium and in Europe, but you have it with small numbers. Here, everything is in such a massive scale, right, that it puts it into perspective, right? So, and the thing that I've seen working with a lot of young, ambitious people, okay, and of course I also do a lot of reading, right? So a lot of the stuff I'm going to show here is also about the reading that I do and the experience that I have here in India. And so what I noticed is that people in India are incredibly ambitious. By the way, there's a lot of studies on this as well. And I don't remember, I didn't put the reference here, but it's a Deloitte study, or I remember which company it was. They did this study and they analyzed all over the world which people are the most ambitious based upon surveys and so on. And so they said Indian millennials are the most ambitious people in the world today, right? And one of the statements is, 37% of the fresh graduates, they want to be a manager in 1 year time, 12 months. Yeah, so it sounds a little bit familiar. We work with a lot of campus graduates, right? I think 12 months is probably even long term for them. Some of them think, they can start a lot sooner, even as a manager, right? And this is just one example. Once people get to a manager, the number of promotions, that people aspire here and the career speed, I think, is huge, right? So even faster than I've seen in a lot of other places around the world, right? There is only one but, is that what I see is there are also not too many people who achieve that goal. So everybody's very ambitious. A lot of people are ambitious, they try, but somehow, they don't realize the dream that they have in mind. And I try to figure out, okay, why is that, right? Why is it that people are so ambitious and they put so much time to learn, right? Such a competitive environment. Why is that a lot of people then don't have these very fast career paths, right? Because if you look at it, a lot of career paths in India, there's a lot of promotions, but there's not so many very young people at more senior positions. Still very traditional type of environment, right? Where in Europe you already see, for example, a lot of young people taking up very senior roles. Right? So I have a couple of ideas of why I think there is less people, right? Or not too many people who achieve their very ambitious goals. And here's three that I see, and maybe there's some other ones that you want to mention. I think the first one is, just in general, lack of role models, right? The economy is changing a lot. It goes from an older economy to a much more digitalized, new economy. And in terms of role models, I'm not sure. I don't see a lot of role models that people are following. You have a couple, right? You have like an Ankur Wariko, I think, right? There's like a great guy that I see a lot of people are following, and he's very... Anyone follows him on LinkedIn? Yeah?
Really?
He's the founder of Nearby, right? .com. Very, very good guy. Follow him on LinkedIn. It's great. He posts every single day. And this is kind of a role model, a guy that also shares his experience on LinkedIn. So, great. But role model also, I think, within the family. Because the economy is growing. A lot of people that I've met here in Bangalore, for example, they come from smaller cities. And in the family, they're often the first ones to work for a multinational. So within the family, there's not a lot of role models, people who can kind of mentor them and guide them. Because they're the first ones to work in a multinational company and they need to kind of figure it out. So that's the first point. It's like, there's not too many role models that people can look and copy from. Second one is similar, right? Not a lot of access to mentors. I know some of the young graduates that I meet, they have somehow in the first 3-4 years of their career, somehow found a person that is mentoring them and they stay in touch with that person. Like 95% of the people that I met doesn't really have a mentor, right? Whether it's in the family or a friend or someone that they met in their career. I didn't see a lot of people that have like a mentor to kind of coach them through their career, right? Sounds familiar or? Yeah. And the third one, and probably the most important one, is lack of pragmatic tools and methods. And what do I mean by that? I had the same realization on this topic than I had almost 15 years ago, when my daughter was born, right? So I remember the day that we came home with our first daughter, right? She was like 3 days old, came home from the hospital. We arrived at home, and we were there, and I said, with the baby, like, and what do we do now? Well, how's this going to work, right? Because you didn't get a manual, right? By the way, the thing that always surprised me is that if you want to drive a bike, if you want to drive a car, if you want to start a small company in Belgium, you want to start a startup, you need to have a lot of tests. You need to have a degree, to drive a car. You need to do a theoretical test, a practical test, and drive for 9 months with, your father. Then you can do the test, and then you can drive the car. But to have a baby, it's okay. Just, find a wife, make a baby, take a baby home, and you're free to do whatever you want. Right? There's like no manual. There's nothing there to take you through that process. Yeah? And here's the same. People are very, very ambitious in their career, right? People or in their studies. A lot of competition. Everybody wants to be the top ranker and the A score and A plus and so on. And then they go in their first job, and then it's like, so what do I do now? What do I do, man? I have a job description, and then what do I do? How do I make my career? Please tell me, what are the steps that I need to follow? And then it depends on your manager. If you have a great manager, great. If you don't have a great manager, you're in trouble, right? So that's the 3 things that I realized. So, and if you want to really make an amazing career, it first starts with just acing your role. Yeah? And so what I tried to do in the last couple of weeks is said, man, if you want to ace your job, what is the manual? What would be my manual, right? If now somebody starts from campus, what would I give to them as the manual if you want to be successful in your career? And step number 1 is to ace your job, right? Before you can even think about getting promoted and becoming a manager and becoming a director and so on. The first thing is you need to ace your job. You need to excel in your current job. If you don't excel in your current job, you're not going to grow, right? So the first thing is I started thinking of what are the things that I've learned in the last 20 years that could help people in their role to have some kind of a manual. What are the things that I could do to really ace my job? Right? So that's what I'm going to share with you today. Yeah, make sense? So these are, I think, 8 steps. 8 steps that I would suggest people to follow if you want to ace your job. Okay? And I have similar type of plans or learning paths for different type of steps in your career. Right? All right? Cool. Yeah. So let's start with, I'm going to take you each of those 8 steps, basically. Yeah? So, step number 1 is commit. So what does this mean? Yeah. So don't have a lot of slides about this topic, and it sounds very simple, but it's not that simple, right? Because it's very similar to what we do with New Year's resolutions. You all saw me posting something on LinkedIn or in the meetup group, and I said, man, ace your job, and you said, this guy's going to speak, so I'm going to attend, right? But I guess you have some kind of a goal in mind. If you came here, it means you have some kind of a goal in mind, I hope, that you want to ace your job. Otherwise, what are you doing here, right? And that's one of the things that you see a lot with training. A lot of people attend trainings, 1 hour, 2 hours a day, you attend training, you learn, you say, wow, this is great, good information, you take notes, and so on. The day after you go back to your job, you get a call here, a crisis there, escalation there, and after 3, 4, 5 days, you completely forgot about this training, and you're back to your normal job, behavior, and so on. And then maybe 3 months later, you meet one of the guys that was together with you in the training, say, man, what did you do? Yeah, I didn't have much time yet. What did you do? I mean, neither, man. It's been too busy, super busy. I didn't do anything with it. Yeah? That's what I had in most of the trainings that I followed in the past. You have great ideas, but in the end, not much changes. Yeah? So the same, what I wanted to do here is if you really want to ace your job, the first thing is that you need to commit. Commit means you don't come here, you listen for 2 hours, then you go home and tomorrow the same thing happens, because then this 2 hours that you've invested is going to be useless. Yeah? It's going to be very interesting, it's going to be nice, you can talk about it, but it's going to be useless for your career. Right? If you want to make it useful, you need to make a commitment. And that's what you should typically do whenever you set goals. So this is based on goal setting research. There's a lot of research that has taken place over the last 100 years, even on how to effectively set goals and achieve goals. Right? A lot of people put goals with New Year resolutions. This year I'm gonna, eat more healthy, Drink less beer. Bad resolution, maybe. Look at my shirt. But people put a resolution, and after 1 month, most people don't, are not on track anymore and just say, man, it was too tough, maybe next year. I'm not going to do anymore. And that's because the first step of setting a goal, there are a couple of best practices that you should follow that increase the probability of you achieving that goal with 42%. Right? So there's one very famous study where they analyzed several people. They put like a group of, I don't remember how many, let's say 100 people together. And they asked a certain group of those 100 people, man, think about a goal that you want to put for yourself, something that you want to achieve. Think about it and think about the following things. Why it's important to you, how long, by when you want to reach it, how you're going to measure that you achieved it. So they gave them a couple of questions to think about their goal. Right? That was one group of people. And then they had a second group of people where they asked the same questions. The only difference was write it down. Take a piece of paper, write down the goal, and write down all the answers. That was the second thing. Then there was a third group, and they told them, you write it down, and you're going to tell a friend. So you write down all the answers, and you're going to meet up with a friend and say, man, I have this goal that I want to achieve. This is why it's important to me, and so on. And the last group, they asked to do the same. Write it down, tell a friend, but also to agree with that friend, man, every 2 weeks, I'm going to send you a quick email, or we're going to meet over a coffee, and I'm going to give you an update on my goal. Right? So the first group of people that just thought about it with a lot of detailed questions, they had, I think, around 35% of those people achieved that goal a couple months later. The last group, 78% of the people achieved that goal. Right? So there's a couple of best practices in goal setting, right? And these are probably the two most important ones. First is write it down. A lot of people say, man, I want to be promoted. I want to get a salary increase. Whatever, people put goals. But how many people here in this room, just raise your hand, actually write it down somewhere in a calendar that you have or a book that you continuously use? How many people have written down their goals that they want to achieve this year? Yeah? You can show me, because I'm going to ask you to show me. Okay. Good. So the first one is just write it down. First thing, that's where it starts. And then answer a couple of simple questions. Why it's important to you, right? Second is describe metrics. For example, you can say, man, this year I want to lose weight. Can be a goal. A better goal is, this year I want to lose 10 kgs by that date. That's a much better goal than just lose weight. Or I want to do more running. That's a bad goal definition. You put metrics. I want to go running 3 times a week, 5K, whatever, something like this. So put a goal that is very specific, put some metrics, and then discuss the goal with the buddy and agree a routine, how often you're going to keep him or her up to date. Simple as that. So the first thing, if you're interested in these 8 steps on how to ace your career, step 0, before we even start, is to think, man, do I really want to do this? Right? Do I want to take, and you decide at the end, right? If you find the content is interesting or not, decide at the end. If you think, man, this sounds interesting, I want to achieve this goal of acing my career, you're going to have to define what it means to you, acing your job. Right? I can give you a couple of ideas what that could mean. And you have to agree with buddy that you're going to tell, man, this is the goal that I put, that's why it's important to me, I'm going to reach it by this moment in time, and this is how I'm going to measure it. And would you be fine if every month or every 2 weeks we go for a coffee and I tell you what I've learned and what I'm doing? That's it. If you do this, the chance of you reaching that goal is like 42% higher than if you just attend and we meet again in 3 months and you didn't write anything down. Yeah? Make sense? So that's part number 1. And this is for every goal that you set. Right? So this is now, I apply this specifically to this course, but for every goal that you set, these are some best practices. If you want to achieve things in your life, write it down with clear metrics, routine, discuss with a buddy, write it down and track it somewhere. If you don't do, the probability that you achieve that goal is very low. Yeah? So if you want to ace your job, step number 1 is make sure you don't drop the ball. It's going to be very difficult for you to say, man, I'm an expert in my job, I'm great in my job. If every week you get a call from somebody, man, remember that I asked you this last week? Did you do? Oh, no, I forgot. Or every Friday you get an escalation because something went wrong in your, whatever, your department, in your job, or something that depends on you, you get an escalation. If this type of stuff happens all the time, you can do all the other steps, but the basics are not in place, right? So the first step is make sure that whatever you're supposed to do is done. Before you even think about acing, make sure you don't drop the ball. So I'll share with you, again, a couple of ideas. A lot of the ideas that you will hear today are very simple. They're not complex things, and probably more than half of them you've already heard of before. The point here is, are you applying them? And do you apply them on a regular basis? Yeah? I'll come back to that later on. So, first part, we're overwhelmed with inputs, right? How do you get, I don't know, questions from your colleagues, your managers, your customers? How do you get those kind of requests? Email? Calls? WhatsApp? What else? Maybe Slack if you're using Slack. Skype, yeah, whatever, man. There's like 10,000 things, right? Where all these inputs can come. I have a personal email, right? And I have a company email. So there's a lot of kind of inboxes where all this stuff that people are asking you is coming from. Who here has a system to keep track of all these things? Can you briefly explain what is your system? Just very briefly, well, how do you keep track of these hundreds of inputs?
I categorize them into different buckets, like personal. Like firstly, I integrate all my emails onto my local machine, which is my personal, and I break it down into separate things. Like personal, if at all I'm communicating with my group of friends, any project that I'm working upon, and any external things that I generally go for. So I categorize them into different buckets and keep a track of it.
So you put everything in your email box?
Yes.
So somebody calls you, he says, can you please do this? You write yourself an email and you keep everything there?
I put it in a OneNote, so the way we do it in our company, I add it in OneNote and integrate it. So
okay.
Yeah, I normally set for reminders as such so that, we have like different applications that is already there in our apps or in our smartphones as such. So anything that comes, it is already coming in a bucketized way. So it is very easy for me to understand which is the work one, which is the personal one, which is coming on my WhatsApp or the Skype one as such. So that's how I bucketize things. Yep. And in case if this is regarding a meeting as such, then it obviously kind of triggers a reminder email. So our Outlook is kind of synced with all these applications.
Okay.
So those things keep popping up very often.
So they keep chasing you.
Yes.
Yeah. Other ones?
Calendar is Google Calendar.
Google Calendar. Yeah, but for example, the challenge that I faced always in the past is you go to a meeting, somebody takes meeting notes. Mm-hmm. Two types of things happen, right? Somebody puts in Excel all the actions, puts your name, puts an action, we put it on a SharePoint or a shared drive, and it goes there. Yeah, the day after I go to another meeting, again somebody takes actions, some actions on my name, sends an email to everybody. Mm-hmm. Another meeting I go, nobody's taking any actions, but I took my own actions on a book, a piece of paper, I wrote down actions for myself. How do you keep track of all these things, right? Because then you need to go, remember that you have 5 action logs that you need to go to on the SharePoint, you have 2 on the shared drive, you have 3 in your email box, you have all your notes that you put on this document. By the way, that meeting I didn't bring my book, so I wrote on a piece of paper. Where did that piece of paper go? Right? Not sure if this sounds familiar to you, but this is kind of my daily life. Yeah? So the first thing that I had to figure out, because I'm not a very organized person, is how do I organize all this mess? Right? And so I'll come back to that a little bit later. So that's one challenge that we have. The second challenge that we have, right, and for sure if you work in environments like I do, is in operations. Question is, do you put the right priorities? Right? Sorry for the very basic visuals on the slide, but I think everybody recognizes what I'm talking about here, or not? The rocks, the small rocks. Anyone heard this story? Huh? So you have this little vase, right? If you start by putting in all this small stuff, which typically,
So if at all you have any big one that you need to actually break it into small pieces, attack one after the another, and then small one becomes a little bigger one, and the small, bigger ones will become a larger ones.
That's it. Yeah. So I need to really, I need to spend time on this one idea that I have for my job. I need to dedicate like 3 hours of time this week to do some reading, to read 2-3 articles that I've already saved for myself, and based upon that start writing a proposal I'm going to discuss with my boss. Right? It's like 3 hours is one of those big rocks. How often have you already moved that calendar block in your calendar to the next week and then a little bit later? Because what happens is you received 20 emails with things that you need to do, 5 calls with your manager, man, can you please look at this escalation? Can you please take care of that? And these big blocks, they keep on moving around, right? Or they don't even make it to the calendar. Because you start with your calendar, with all the emails that come in, with all the meetings that people are booking for you, that you need to go and attend, and the big rocks don't make it, right? And so this very simple concept of time management, and this, again, a very simple concept, but to apply it is very, very tough. Because the concept says, man, if you fill your week with all the small stuff first, and then you try to fit in all of this, it's not going to work. It won't fit in. But the other way around, and maybe the visuals don't really add up in this case, right? But if you put in the big ones first, the small ones somehow will always fit in. That's just the logic of life, right? And this sounds unrealistic at the beginning of the week, but in the end, this happens, right? So the question is, are you really prioritizing the right things that you need to do, or are you just chasing all the escalations and the small stuff and not really making a change in your job because you never get to the point of those important but not so urgent things, right? And that's where I think everybody knows this Eisenhower matrix, Mr. Dwight Eisenhower, right? Everybody knows this, right? So important, yes or no, urgent, yes or no, and then what are you focusing on? Yeah. So why am I saying all these things? Based upon, again, I'm a not so organized person. There's a lot of people, right, and probably here in this room as well, who are great at organizing stuff and they have their systems, right? I don't need to teach those people anything. But there's also a lot of people like me who are not so organized and just try to do their best and look for some kind of a management system. Right? So based upon the several books that I've read and all the trial and error, I have kind of a system that I follow every week, very simple, that makes sure that I don't drop the ball. And it works pretty well because all the people that I work with, there's some people here in the room, but a lot of the managers that I work with, if you would ask them, what is Serge really good at? They would say, man, organization and routine. It's unbelievable. That's one of the things that you ask people, they would say, man, this guy is great at organizing his stuff. You tell him something, it gets done. Right? So that's the thing of don't drop the ball. But it's very simple because I have a simple management system, which is every week, I look at what I need to do the next week. Yeah? And first, you start with what you need to do in your role. In your current role, 2 very important things. One is you have targets, right? Depending on the company, those targets drive your bonus or not. But there are clear expectations that you got, right? There are clear targets that you need to deliver, right? In your current role. Whatever your role is, corporate, non-corporate, there are things that you have to deliver. Yeah? That's the first one. So list your targets. Probably most of them are even very with absolute numbers, right? The second thing you should do is look at your key customers, right? I think even stakeholders, let's not talk about it yet, mainly customers. What do I mean with customers, right? In some roles, it's really customers, right? So this also applies if you don't work in a corporate environment, you have customers, right? If you work in a corporate environment, you also have customers. If I work in the, invoicing team, the ones behind me are the collections team, so if I don't send the right invoices, the guys in collections are going to suffer because we're sending all the wrong invoices to the customers, so I cannot collect those customers, those invoices. So in every single role that you do, there is always a customer of what you do. Yeah? There is something that you deliver, and somebody is using that as an input for their job. You never work in isolation, no? Yeah, got it? So what I'm saying here is the first thing that you need to do to get your routine in place is make sure that you have a clear visibility of what are your targets that you need to achieve in your role. Second, who are your customers and what do those customers expect? Because your targets will not reflect everything that people expect of you, right? You will have some financial targets here and so on, certain KPIs you need to achieve, but there are certain things that you do that people would also expect from you that might not be in your targets. Yeah? So Yeah. Oops, I need to click this. So what you should do is do a voice of the customer. You know the voice of the customer? VOC, Six Sigma?
Yeah.
Right? I'll show some Six Sigma simple tools. Voice of the customer, the first thing you do. So when you do step 1, I'll recap at the end. The first thing you're going to do is make sure you have your targets clear, clarified. This is what I need to achieve. These are the target values. That's clear. Second thing you're going to do is you're going to list who are my main customers. Who are the people that depend on my outputs. You're going to meet those people one by one and say, man, tell me something about my output, right? The things that I deliver to you. Are you happy? Are you unhappy? Right? And you do a voice of the customer, right? And it's like 3 simple things that you need to do. This customer will give you a comment. Right? Let's take a simple example of pizza delivery or whatever. The customer will say, man, it's like the pizza always arrives quite late, and I would like to have more warmer pizza, because whenever you deliver this pizza to me, it's quite cold already. Yeah? So you will get certain comments from the customer, right? You just take notes when you're talking to your internal, external customer, and then you need to figure out what is the underlying issue. What is it that this customer finds important about that product or that output, right? And there will be several things. For example, here he's talking about, man, I would like to have a warm pizza. Yeah? So the underlying issue is that it's often cold, and it's cold probably because it arrives pretty late. Yeah? And then you need to come down to what is the customer requirement. The customer wants to get my pizza in 30 minutes. He wants to have it warm, and he preferably wants to get what he has ordered, and not the pizza of the neighbors. Right? Something like that. Very simple. This is a very simple exercise. Yeah? But a simple template where you go and talk to people that you work with, right? That are your kind of customers. You have a discussion with them and say, what do you expect of me? Right? What can I do better in my current role? You try to take notes and try to get to what is it exactly that they want. And try to make this again numeric, so you can measure it. Yeah? And if you do those 2 things, that's kind of step 1, right? So first you need to understand, in my current role, to make sure I ace it, what are my targets that I want to achieve? And what do my customers expect? Yeah? Simple. Those are like the basic expectations. Then, second, you look at all the other freaking stuff. Right? Basically what you did in step number 1 is the big rocks. The things that are really important to your customers and to your role. You start identifying what are the big rocks. Then you look at all the other stuff that you have. You open this action log, that action log, you look at your notes, you look at your calendar, you look at your emails, you go through all that information, you use this Eisenhower matrix, right, to a certain extent, you need to prioritize, and then based on that, you book your agenda. So what I do every week, and I have it plugged in my calendar, what I did even once in a role that I had, because it was quite complex and inputs came from all over the place, I put a block in my calendar, it was like a 2-hour block, every Sunday evening or Monday morning, and it had written down, these are the things that you need to check. Because I was using a certain system for this team, right, where I had to go in and see what are the things that I need to do, follow up. Another system with another team, what do I need to do and follow up. Then look at my targets, then look at some expectations I got from some customers, put that all together, and based on that, book your week. Make sense? So very simple concepts that you all know, but it's all about this weekly routine and discipline to organize your stuff. Huh? And that's probably the most important part. It's stick to a certain routine. And the way I found, and again, there's a lot of research and I read a lot of books about this as well, is how do you build a habit? Basically, a routine is a habit. Right? There's the power of habit.
Charles De Vos, the same thing. Charles De Vos actually talks about this reward queue and routine, about the 2 mices.
Yeah.
Like they give, they release 2 mouse in a maze, and they'll be awarded with a cheese. So for one, every day the piece of cheese would be at the same place, whereas for the other one, the position of the cheese would be moved from one place to the another.
Yeah.
So one mice would be completely stick to the routine, and once it's moved out of the position, it thinks something has gone wrong. Whereas the other one, it tries to identify where the smell is coming from and it changes its path.
That's even another type of study. That's not just about routine, that's also about how you drive behavior, but it's the same type of concept. The point is here, if you want to build a routine, there's 2 things that you need to do. Right? So if the routine here is, get organized every week and make sure I do the right things during that week that are really important, there's two things you need. One is you need a cue. The cue means the trigger that will trigger you to say, man, okay, now I need to do my routine. Yeah? The second is the reward. Once you did the routine, what is the reward that you get? Just like the mouse gets a piece of cheese, what is it you're going to give yourself to say, man, great, you did your routine. And I'll give you a very simple example. Very simple example that I applied for this. Right? So I had this idea, let me build this content. I have all these ideas in my head, man, I want to organize this training session. So what did I do to make sure I was ready here 3 weeks after I posted on LinkedIn, I think, right? Where I had nothing, I had absolutely nothing. The only thing I did is I'm going to put a routine that whenever I have time, so it can be any time during the week, I will go to Starbucks, and it's here, right? So whenever I have time, whenever I don't have a meeting, whenever I'm not in the office, but Saturday, Sunday, in the evening, I'm traveling or whatever, whenever, the cue for me was just, man, I have nothing to do. Yeah? The reward was, I go to Starbucks, I treat myself a nice cappuccino with extra whipped cream on top, and I'm going to spend time making the deck. Simple like this, right? The same thing you can do is, what is this routine that you're going to put in place? If you say, man, I really need to get my calendar better organized. Is it every Sunday evening? I don't know. Every Sunday evening after dinner, that you say, I'm going to do this routine for 1 hour, and I'm going to buy myself a cake, and I'm going to eat the cake after I did this 1 hour of planning. Whatever it is that you like, but try to figure out this kind of a routine. So the moment that you have this cue, you need to have a strong recognition point. Can be a moment in time, right? Can be every Sunday evening at 7 o'clock. Can be, like I said, the moment that I have nothing to do and I would go to Netflix or something else. The moment that you define the cue, it's surprising, but the next time that this situation happens, in your brain, automatically this thought pops up. Automatically pops up. And then you will start doing the routine, and then you get your own reward that you defined. That's how you build a habit. Right? And the same thing with smoking. How does smoking work? The cue is, in most of the cases, people get stressed. They're like, man, I need some time for myself. I need to get out of here. That's the cue. People do, they go outside. They start smoking. There's other people with the same stuff. They start talking, they relax, they chat, and the reward is the whatever. It's probably not the nicotine, right? The reward is more the fact of relaxing, the stress is not there, I'm outside, I'm chatting with a couple of people, I go back, I'm relaxed. That's how smoking typically works. The cue is people get stressed, they have this idea of, man, my reward is I'm going to be outside for 5 minutes relaxing, then I go outside and do my routine of my daily smoke. So smoking works very well in that way, right? Because the reward is, it's quite addictive. Huh? So that's it. So that's step number 1. So step number 1 is define a routine and organize your stuff. By the way, here I'm talking about your job and your career. You can do this for everything. Because you have an agenda at home as well. You have kids, you have a wife, you have a husband, you have parents, you have I don't know what. Are you doing the same stuff? Are you doing in your life what you think is really important, or are you just chasing every day, right? So step 1, don't drop the ball. Make sense?
Yeah.
So simple techniques, but it's just about the discipline of doing it every day and every week. The second one, once you say, man, my job is fully under control, I don't mess anything up, then you start looking at, man, what can I do better? Let me get some feedback of people. What can I do better? Right? And then you make a SWOT. SWOT, very simple, everybody knows. The SWOT. Who already made a SWOT of themselves? Yeah, okay, good. Make a SWOT of yourself.
Yes.
Which is strength, weakness, opportunity, strength. This is about you. What are your personal strengths? What are your weaknesses? This has nothing to do with you. These are things that are happening around you and are opportunities for you in your career and threats for you in your career. So same principle as a business SWOT, but you do it for yourself. What are you really good at? What are the things that you could improve? What are things happening around you where you could use your strength, and show that you're really good at it, right? And build your career. What are the things happening around you that are threats for your career? Maybe something that you're not good at, and oh boy, it just became very important. I'm not good in analytics, and everybody in the office is talking about analytics, analytics, analytics. Man, this is a threat for me. If I don't start learning about analytics, I might become obsolete. Right? So here I put some examples, right? But not very complicated. Make your own SWOT. But how do you do that? Couple of steps. First, you know yourself, right? So you can write down some stuff. But the second is, you get input from colleagues. So not just your own input. The strengths you will fill out very easily. The weaknesses, you probably don't have a lot of inspiration. No? The threats and opportunities, you might have some inspiration, but maybe also not too much. In the beginning, the first time you do is very tough, I can tell you. So get input from colleagues and other people that you work with. Yeah? Get input and go to them, and man, you will be surprised how many people would just make time and say, yeah, let me give you some feedback. Based upon how I've worked with you, these are things that you're really good at. And if there's one thing that I could advise you to do better, is this. Just give a call, walk up to people and say, can you give me some input for my SWOT? Yeah? Once you've done this, you discuss with whoever is your manager, and you get his point of view, or her point of view, and you do the same. And then once you did this exercise, you take one. You need to take out the S here. One. You take one goal. And I'm going to tell you to take one weakness. We'll come to the strengths later on. I'm going to tell you to take one weakness, one thing that you got as a feedback from several people and say, man, this is one thing that you're not so good at. And it's important for your job. You're going to take that one weakness and you're going to define, exactly the way as I explained in the beginning, you're going to define a goal. How are you going to improve that weakness? And why a weakness? Because if you want to ace your job, it's all great. Everybody says nowadays you need to focus on your strengths, forget your weaknesses, right? You read this stuff too as well. In the past, everybody said if you want to improve yourself, you need to focus on your weaknesses. Now more and more people are saying you need to focus on your strength, forget your weaknesses. You will never improve those. But the point is, if you take a weakness where you can improve, it makes a huge impact on the people around you. First, because you're taking feedback, you're listening to those people, you're taking their advice, and you're doing something about it. So this influences the people around you and the perception of people around you. So much more than you improving a weakness, it's important to change the perception of the people around you. That's why I suggest in the first step you take a weakness, something you're not that good at, which is important for your role. You don't speak Spanish very well. Yeah, but we don't use Spanish, right? So not relevant. Don't do that, right? Take something else. But take a weakness and put a goal that you're going to improve. Yeah? And do the same methodology. Try to make the goal very concrete. Put the number, put the deadline, and so on. Yeah? So that's step number 2. So first, you make sure you don't drop the ball. Third, you make your own SWOT and you pick one weakness that you're going to improve. Yep. The next one is understand your context.
So, Serge, at times when you think about your strengths, those strengths, after a point of time, might be a weakness when you change your roles. Say, for example, when you're an individual contributor, you're so good at handling things from an end to end, but once you become a team lead, it might reflect to the team that you are looking each and individual piece, and the perception might be like you are micromanaging things. How do we convert when you move from one position to the other position, that your strength might be weakness, and how to convert the weakness against your strength?
Yeah, the SWOT is not something that is fixed, no? The SWOT changes all the time. Because it's a very good point, depending on the role you're in, depending on the company that you're in and so on, certain strengths can become weaknesses. So this SWOT is not an exercise that you do once and then it's frozen for the next 10 years. This is something that you need to continuously look at and see what am I really good at in this current role, what am I not so good at in the current role. And then it's just about doing this self-reflection regularly, right? Getting feedback from several people, and again, taking one weakness and try to improve it. Make sense?
Yeah.
No? Next one is understand your context. Very important point. Again, a very simple methodology. And I had an example here. Let me try to remember what the example was. Understand the context. Yes. I have one example of something that actually happened. And it's very interesting. It's on payroll. I have some people here from that area. So payroll, something that happened when I was in Belgium. There is an escalation that there's a lot of people in the brewery that are being paid incorrectly, and we need to do corrections on their salary slip. You know, so they get their salary. The month after, we realize there's a mistake in their salary. We need to make a correction, correct it. That's very annoying, right? If as an employee, every month you get corrections, right? If the correction is you get more money, it's kind of okay, yeah? But if the correction is I'm going to take back some money, it pisses people off, right? So what was happening is we received a lot of escalations that there were a lot of errors in payslips. Yeah? So we started looking at, by the way, that team was here in India. So we talked to that team in India, said, man, what is happening, what's going on, and so on. And we analyzed, okay, what is going on? What is the job of the people in that team? And they received a ticket, right? So it goes through a ticketing system, a ticket with an attachment. That attachment was a handwritten document that they had to read, try to understand. A lot of them were in French and in Dutch. It's not easy to understand, right? If you live in India. They had to go in SAP and fill out in SAP that this person had been sick. So this was a process where people who had been sick had to report that they were sick on a given day. People here would receive that information, go into SAP and update that this person had been sick on that particular day. Depending on that, there is a correction somehow on the payslip, yeah? Because the insurance comes in and so on. So we started looking at, man, how can we improve this process, right? Because the feedback we're getting is that it's happening too late and we have too many errors. So we started looking at how do we automate? Let's automate the process, right? So we can do it a lot faster if we automate it. This document that we received, handwritten, can we get that document in an electronic form? Let's start discussing with the guys in Belgium if they can send us electronic forms, right? We put some controls. We put the second guy to check if the information was correctly filled out, right? So we put all these controls in place. Same escalations kept on coming. We kept on making the same amount of mistakes. Nothing changed. Then we said, okay, let's go into the brewery. Let's go. We visited the brewery. The first thing that we do is we arrive in the brewery and we're there at the reception, and in the reception there's like a big red box where people can put papers. And so we asked, what is this red box? And they said, this red box is for employees. Whenever they have been sick, they need to take a doctor's note that they received from a doctor and deposit it in the red box. So, okay, and then where does it go? Then somebody from people department picks it up once a week. They take all the pieces of paper. They're handwritten doctor's notes, right? So this is, I don't know, here it's a lot of electronic information already. Yeah? In Belgium, still a lot of doctors write doctor's notes, right? So these documents are in that red box. Once a week, somebody picks up all these documents, goes to the scanner, scans in the documents, creates a ticket, and attaches the documents. That ticket with the document comes to India. We receive this document that you can hardly read, try to figure out who it is, then apply the sickness note, and it results in the correction. So just by going into that brewery, talking to several people that were involved in that process, we understood, okay, we cannot automate, because this would mean we need to go to thousands of doctors and ask them to, not make their sickness notes anymore handwritten, but no, it's not going to work. So forget it, we cannot automate this thing. The second thing, of course, we are very often late because these papers are in that freaking red box for a week. So they can send it to me and I can speed up and put 10 more people and do it very fast, but if it's pending in that red box for a week, of course I will always be late. So just by moving out of your role, start talking to other people who are working in that same, let's say, process. By understanding the context, all of a sudden the perspective is completely changed, and we found a way to change that process and improve the job of those people. So the point I'm making here, right? You really can understand your job 10 times better if you understand the full context, not just what you do, right? And again, this applies in corporate, applies outside of corporate, right? So if you go to Starbucks, why do they have this lid? If you're just in Starbucks, your job is to make good coffee, right? And put it in a cup. Why you have the lid is because the customer takes the cup and goes into a car and drinks it in the car. So, but because they understand where their customers go and what people are doing with it, they put the lid and they put this little carton because it's very hot. Yeah. So if you understand the full end-to-end process and what your customers are doing with your product or what your suppliers are doing, then you can make a lot of improvements in your product or in your role because you understand the full context. Yeah? So which tool do you use? Oops. SIPOC. For those who know Six Sigma, you do a SIPOC. Yeah? Again, very simple. You put, something is messed up here. So forget the requirements. I think it makes some changes. Here you just put what is the stuff that you do. I do payroll activities, I do this, I do such and so on. These are your responsibilities. You make a SIPOC for yourself. What typically happens is people make a SIPOC for a process. The payroll process, let's make a SIPOC. What I'm suggesting is make a SIPOC for you. Just like I said, make a SWOT for you, make a SIPOC for you. What is it that you're responsible for? What inputs do you need to do your job? What outputs do you generate? Who are those customers, right? Those customers, by the way, you've talked to already 2 weeks ago to get some of their expectations. And who are those suppliers that you work with? What I'm suggesting here is not a discussion again on the requirements, is go to those suppliers and go and understand what they're doing. Go sit with them and say, man, I receive from you, all the customer invoices, and then I need to collect them. I know there's a lot of errors and so on. Can I sit with you and we just review? How do you produce those invoices, right? Who do you work with? How does it work? Which systems do you use? Just by going sitting there and understanding what they do, I'm pretty sure you will discover some things that you didn't know, and that will fix a lot of issues in the inputs that you get. The same the other way around. No? So again, applies in corporate, applies outside of that. No? So do a SIPOC for your specific role. And the purpose here is to understand what they do and understand what they do. For you to get a full context of where you are in that process. Yeah? Make sense? Next one. Be the spider in the web. What does this mean?
Make sure you connect everything what you do. And keep the link. Keep the link.
Keep a link, yeah. This is kind of the point that you mentioned, right? That you understand everything around you. What I mean with this is make sure you communicate to everybody around you, because you can do an amazing job, right? You cannot drop the ball. You can make an amazing SWOT, right? Understand the full end-to-end process, but if you're just spending your time somewhere in a little corner, working very, very, very hard, and nobody knows what you're doing, nobody will know you, so how are you going to make a career? Right? So this is about mapping your stakeholders. Again, very, very simple. But who has already for their role just mapped all the stakeholders? Who are the people that are important for your career? Again, this is not a stakeholder map. You have this typical stakeholder map on power and influence on your project. You use this in project management. What I'm suggesting is take that same simple methodology and apply it to your career. If you want to make a career, who are the people that are going to influence your career? Yeah? So for example, yes, your VP, he's going to have a very high influence on your career, right? If he doesn't know you, if he knows you really well, if he knows what you're achieving, he can have a big influence. Yeah? Your direct manager, same. This other manager, a call, maybe not really, right? He knows me, but he cannot really influence my career. It's mainly those people who will influence. Yeah? Maybe, maybe not. And by the way, this customer, man, she knows this VP really well, so if I screw up something that I do for her, he will get to know and my career is screwed. Or the other way around, if I make this Ira extremely happy, she's for sure going to tell Sunil, and this is great for my career. So think of who are all the people that can influence your career. So there's for sure your manager and the manager of your manager. They will always be there. Who else is going to be there? Who are the people that somehow can influence your career? And then make a simple, again, not complex, make a simple overview of what they are interested in. Not as sports and cricket and whatever. No, what is their main interest, right, about, or expectation about you? Right? So this VP, you're a part of his team. Man, he wants to make sure that cash flow target is delivered, and he wants to have high engagement in his team. That's what is like top of mind for him. So what are you going to do to help him achieve this? Maybe there's some things that you can do to help your VP achieve this. or this. The same with your manager. What is top of mind for her? Man, she doesn't want escalations about her team. She wants to make sure that this team performs well. She doesn't want to go to Sunil and go and explain I have an escalation, so no escalations. And she wants to be seen by him as a very good manager. So how can you help your manager with those priorities? Maybe next time that you see Sunil, say, man, I think Shadina is really doing a great job. She's really helping me with my, my development. Really, really great. Simple things you can do. You're going to help her, and you influence your career. So put a couple of things. What is it that's important to them? And then put here a simple routine. Again, I'm always going to talk about routines. Life is about routines. It's all about routines. What is the routine that you're going to do once a week, once a month, a quarter, whatever it is, to somehow talk to that stakeholder? You know what? Well, every month we have a meeting with him. We have a formal meeting. Right? So every month there is a meeting where we present our results. So I'm going to make sure that in half of those meetings, I have something to present. Next meeting is in 3 weeks. Okay, I'm going to think, what am I going to do for one of those two things? So I can get 5 minutes to present something that I'm doing on team engagement. Give yourself some visibility. I'm going to have a coffee chat every 2 weeks with this guy, just to kind of sense check. Right? Just have a coffee with him every 2 weeks, see how things are going. And every month, I'm going to call this lady just to see if she's happy. Right? Are you still happy with the stuff that I'm doing for you? How's it going? Anything else that I can do for you? Simple. Yeah. These are, again, some big rocks that you put in your calendar. Yeah? Okay? And then comes a step of going beyond. So now what you did is, you don't drop the ball. Everything that people are asking you, everything that is priority, everything you need to do is being done. Great. You took feedback from people, and there's like one weakness that you're really working on. People see around you, you took the feedback and you're improving something, so perception of the people around you will change. You started talking to your suppliers, your customers. People were like, wow man, she came to us and wanted to know how we work, and look, we had an interesting discussion because we found some new stuff. Again, you're influencing people around you. Yeah? You started talking to people that are important to your career. By now, you're like 4, 5, 6 weeks in the game, something around you is happening. People are noticing. Unless you tell me you're already doing all of this. If you're already doing all of this, nothing will change. If you start doing this, something will happen around you. Your manager will come to you and say, man, I think you're doing really great lately. Something happened. So it's like, great, man, keep going. I can tell you, this is going to happen. Then you do the final sprint. Then you do go beyond. And go beyond, again, a lot of very interesting concepts. This also comes from one book, I think it's Good to Great. Is the book, Jim Collins, right? Very famous Harvard professor. Wrote a couple of books. But it's also similar to Ikigai. Who knows Ikigai? Ikigai. Yeah? It's very similar. So this is about one thing that you are really passionate about, that you can be the best at, and something that obviously the company needs. Right? Why this little animal? Right? If you compare to a fox, fox is very clever, right? For whatever type of solution or whatever type of problem, he will find some kind of a solution. So the fox is looking for the hedgehog and will always find sneaky ways somehow to try to approach and find the hedgehog. Go at night, go behind the tree, hide. He will be very clever and try to find all types of ways to get to the hedgehog. The hedgehog is only good in one thing. Only one thing. If you do this, so the moment that the fox, whatever he does, right, he can work hard and try to find a solution to catch the hedgehog. The moment the finger comes here, he does what he's really, really good at, becomes this ball, fox is lost. Yeah? Same type of concept here. Find something that you are really passionate about, something that you really like doing. By the way, you can be the best at it. And it's something that the company needs. So let me give you an example. Imagine that you are in the team, one of the people that whenever there is a problem in somebody's life or career, they will come to you and say, man, can we have a chat? I want to discuss something with you. You're like the person that everybody trusts. Right? People come to you, have a conversation, they share stuff with you because you listen. Right? You have some experience, you share your point of view, people trust you. Maybe this is something that apparently people come to you, so probably you can be the best at it. You probably also like it, I hope. Yeah? If you don't like it, then please don't pick it. Right? You're probably passionate about it. Yeah? And it's something that the company would be able to use. Right? It's always good to have somebody in the team that everybody can trust, because you can try to solve the situation or even approach the manager and say, man, there's something going on here, we need to help this person with X, Y, Z. We in ABI call that a people ambassador. The people ambassador is the person that everybody trusts, has this great connection with people, right? And helps situations that the line manager would never know about. Yeah? One example. Second example could be, man, you're great at developing macros or developing algorithms. This is something that you do in the weekend. Whenever you have 10 minutes time, you go and you start learning about algorithms or VBA or R, whatever it is. You learn, you're trying at home and so on. This is something that you're passionate about, so you can probably be the best at it. Oh, okay, the company probably will need it also. Right? Maybe you can automate some stuff that today is very mundane, nobody wants to do. You go in, you automate it. Or maybe you can bring some of those algorithms and find insights in the data of your team that today nobody else is able to do. So here you're going to look at one strength, something that you are good at, you could be the best at, you really like doing, and the company needs it. You're going to define that one thing, and with that one thing, you're going to go all in. I am going to be known as the person who is the people ambassador, as the person who is the guy who brings the insights into the data through new algorithms. I'm going to be the person who, I don't know what, is going to change this way we do marketing. Whatever it is. Pick that one thing that you will be known for. No? So now you did all of this, right? So you don't drop the ball anymore. People can trust what you're doing because you pick it up. You're improving one thing. People around you see, man, this guy is taking feedback. He's improving that one feedback we gave him. You understand the end-to-end. You're talking to some stakeholders. You're keeping them up to date on your achievements. You're helping them reach some of their priorities. You start to get known for something that you're the best at. I think something will change in your career. Something will change. Yeah? But then it's about execution. Because if you do this for a couple of weeks, and then you go back to your old habits and just watch a little bit more Netflix movies and I don't know what, do something else, and you don't do any of this anymore, okay, it was like a short spike and then it goes back, nothing will happen, right? So then it's about consistent execution. So what I suggest, right, and this is the difference, by the way, between average and great. Look everywhere, and I like to compare always with sports. That's actually what happens in sports. Messi is not the best football player in the world. Ronaldo neither. They're not the best football players in the world. There's a lot of other players who are born and are a lot better than Ronaldo and Messi. They just never have the commitment, the focus and discipline to work every single day for hours in the weekend. Don't go out for cocktails. Don't go out for cocktails, and then, no. They say, man, I'm going to go all in. They have this huge commitment that they want to be the best player in the world. They just focus their whole life on this, and they have discipline and execution. There's like one very famous cyclist in Belgium. There's also a great example of this. He's like the world champion in a cycling sport that you guys don't know, but he's very famous in Europe. And he's also an example of this. He says, I want to be the best ever cyclist in this off-road cycling sport. And he went that far in terms of focus that he was sleeping in his house. He put a tent in his bedroom that kept the oxygen level lower. Just like if you're sleeping on whatever, Everest, 2,000-3,000 meters high, oxygen level is lower, which is good for your stamina, right? He had a tent over his bed that lowered oxygen levels, simulated that he was living on 2,000-3,000 whatever meters height, which was improving his stamina. The guy never went out. He never drank any cocktails, never ate any Belgian fries, because he said, I'm going to go all in, and he became, 20 years in a row, the best cyclist ever in that sport. He was competing at the age of 42 with the youngsters who were 21, and he was beating them. So being great and having success in your career is not about being talented or gifted, or sorry for those who graduated from IIT and IIM. That's not going to define your success. It's going to help you define successful or be successful in your career, but it's not enough, because that's what's going to make a lot more difference than your degree. No? So what I suggest is, again, this routine. Make a routine once a week where you do these basic expectations, right? So you look at your targets, you look at all your other stuff. Remember this very first step, look at your targets, look at all the other stuff, all the things that you need to do, plan your week. You do this every single week. But on top of that, in that same routine, you will look at this one piece of feedback, one thing that you said you're going to improve, and every week Sunday evening, you look at this one thing that you said I'm going to improve, and you define what it is that you're going to do this week to improve. I need to improve my presentation skills. Okay, what I'm going to do this week? I'm going to go to YouTube, LinkedIn, and follow this training. That's what I'm going to do this week. The week after, again, you get triggered. What am I going to do this week? This week I know there is a presentation that my manager is going to do. I'm going to ask him if I can do a part of the presentation. Whatever. What are the things you're going to do to improve that one weakness? The same for the context. What are you going to do this week to talk to one of your suppliers, one of your customers? One thing. You're going to book 1 hour in your calendar that you're going to meet this colleague of yours who's going to explain you at a high level what that process means and how you interact with him. One thing. And you're going to do one thing to talk to one of your stakeholders. You're going to give a call to this Ira lady to see how things are going. And the last one that we need to add here is for go beyond, for your X factor. What is the one thing you're going to do this week to further develop this X factor? If you do this every week, and I tell you, in the beginning it's a bit painful, right? Because you need to try to figure it out. It's going to take some time. If you do this every week, you invest 1 hour a week to do this, I'm pretty sure you're going to ace your job. Yeah? But it will depend on the consistency. Yeah? Okay? So imagine you do all these things. You do consistent execution for several weeks. Then you go and sit with your manager and say, man, can we talk? I would like to have some feedback. Right? So let's say week 10, you're going to sit with your manager and say, man, can we have a chat? I'd like to talk about my performance and see what do you think. Right? By the way, feedback is for free. You know Milton Friedman? Who knows Milton Friedman? No economists in the room? I studied 22 years ago, I studied economy, and one of the sentences I remembered for my whole life is this one. There is no such thing as a free lunch. Doesn't exist. So by the way, the fact that we might be here for free or you get a free coffee there, it's not free. For you it's free. Somebody else is paying. Yeah? So free does not exist in the world. Right? I think except one thing. Feedback is for free. If you're going to sit with somebody and ask, can you give me some feedback? Those people will not want anything in return. Maybe one thing. One thing they would like to get in return is that you take the feedback and you do something with it. Right? But even you will get the feedback for free. But they will become very happy if you do something with it. Huh? So what I put here is, it's a different slide, it's a bit cleaned up. My 6 best practices on how to give feedback. Again, a lot of reading and experience, but these are 6 things. If you apply this in a feedback session with your manager or a colleague or even your wife or your husband, it's going to make a very big difference. Yeah? And the first one is, where's the first one? Here. Listen actively. If you go into a feedback session, first you go in prepared, but the first thing you do is you shut up. You don't say a word. You sit in the meeting and say, okay, can you give me some feedback? And you shut up. And you need to shut up your mind. Because the typical things that happen is that your manager starts talking, and first he talks about some good stuff, and then you're like, oh yeah, yes, I know, yeah. Thank you, yeah, I'm really good at this, thank you, yeah. And then he said, that's also one thing you can improve. Yeah, I think you can improve, your presentation skills. The moment he says this, your mind will go like, what is he meaning, man? Presentation skills? Remember, last week I did an amazing presentation. What is he saying? Your mind will go like, start thinking and already thinking, what am I going to say to tell him that he's not right? No? Sounds familiar? Happens, no? Yeah? If your wife says, man, you came home that late yesterday, you start thinking, no. I told you I was going to be a little right? First thing is, just shut up. Be silent, listen to what the person is saying, and do one thing, is rephrase. Rephrase just means your manager tells you, you know what, you can improve your presentation skills. So you think that I don't make good slides, or no, man, your slides are great. Slides are really, really good. But how you present, you speak too quickly, you know what, and your words are not very consistent. There is no clear storyline in what you're saying. All of a sudden, you just rephrased what the person was saying. All of a sudden, you got very concrete feedback. So step one is be silent, shut up, and rephrase. No? Step two is ask questions. So once you receive that feedback, you're going to ask some questions. But questions to understand, not to challenge. Question to understand. And then you use, who knows the SBI technique? SBI in giving feedback. Yeah? This is a technique that the manager should use to give you feedback. He's going to describe the situation. Right? Remember that last week you were doing this presentation for 20 people? Yeah? Well, what was happening is that you were talking this fast and you were not looking at the people. So that after 10 minutes of talking, everybody was lost. And all of a sudden you were finished talking. Nobody had a clue what was your key point, and it was silent in the room. And remember, I was sitting there with you. I kind of stepped in and said, so as a summary, those are the 3 points, and this is the decision we would like to take. Remember? So what happened is this situation, your behavior was like this. You weren't looking at the people, you were talking too fast, you weren't checking with them. Impact was everybody was lost. What I would expect you to do is what I did. Summarize, look at the people, see if they understood, ask a question. That's what I would expect you to do. So if your manager is not prepared, and if your manager doesn't know SBI, you can do. You just go, so you mentioned that I cannot present very well. My presentation skills are not great. Can you give me an example of the last time that you saw me presenting, right? And how I behaved, how I presented, and what was wrong? Ask this question, and he will need to start thinking and give you a concrete example that you can learn from. But again, the point here is you ask to understand. You don't ask to challenge. Yeah? Okay? The third one is here. Don't argue or be defensive. Yeah? I briefly touched on it. So all feedback is perception. Yeah? You guys will leave this meeting afterwards. Half of you will say, man, this was really great. This guy presents really well, has a lot of experience. Man, a lot of this content was really great, really useful, I'm going to use. Half of the people is going to say, man, this guy, his presentation skills are not that great. He talks very fast, right? I didn't really understand. He doesn't give a lot of examples. And some of the stuff that he presented, man, I'm already using every day. So it's like, not that great. So people will move out of this meeting, same people, very different perception. I will talk to him, I will ask him for some feedback. He will give completely different feedback than she will give me. So all feedback that you get in the end is perception. No? So don't argue and don't defend. Don't say, no, I was presenting really well, man. I was looking at people. No, man, I can tell you were not really looking at people because you were not. No, I did. Remember, I looked at him. No. Take the feedback, don't argue, right? You were clearly not demonstrating a certain behavior. According to him, he's giving you an advice what you could do better. So don't push back, take the feedback, but also take feedback from multiple people. That's why it's important to go and talk to other people, to colleagues, not just your manager. Because your manager will give you one piece of input, but it's going to be one perception. Other people will give you other type of input. And then you bring it together and you see, is there something that comes back a lot? And then this is something that you should really work on. Yeah? So, shut up, ask questions, don't defend. Yeah? So you just go in and listen. You don't push back on anything. Then, you don't take it personal, because this is not about you as a person, right? This person he's not attacking your character. When he gives you a feedback on something you can improve, it's not about you as a person, it's not about you as a character. Yeah? So don't take it personal, yeah? And be humble. You get feedback, great. This is something that you can improve. Don't take it personal. Which comes very close to don't judge. Typically what happens is you go into a meeting with anyone. Well, imagine that he's going to give me some feedback, but I know him very well. I worked with him for the last 10 years and know we have a very open conversation. If he tells me that my presentation was not that great because I should do this and this and this better, I probably will be very open for the feedback and say, man, okay, thanks for the feedback. If I ask him for the feedback and I know we don't really get along, I avoid him as much as possible in the office because we're very different characters, we don't get along, has very different opinions. And if he's going to give me feedback, I'm probably going to sit there like this. No, give me some feedback. My boss asked me to ask feedback from you. So what do you think, man? Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you. You will not listen, right? So don't judge. The person who is giving you the feedback is just the messenger, right? So take feedback, even from people that might be very different than you, that maybe you don't like that much. And if your manager is not a person that you're best friends with, still take the feedback. It's not, don't judge the person, right? Take the feedback from the person and try to improve. And the last one is, say thank you because it's for free, but act on it. Do something with it. Low battery, okay. But I think we're as good as done. So those are 6 tips. If you go into a feedback meeting, look at those 6 tips, relax, try to apply, and the meeting will be very different than if you go in very defensive. Yeah? And prepare for your one-to-one, write down some achievements, so you can also talk about your achievements, because those 10 weeks, you've been working on a lot of stuff, you want to share that, right? You want to talk about the achievements that you did, and talk about some improvement areas. So that's it. So this is my manual, my shot at a manual, how to ace your job. Yeah? First, commit in week 1. By the way, if you're interested, what I would do for those people who say, man, I want to do this, I want to try this and see if it makes a difference in my career, I'm going to send you something here in week 1. I'm going to give you some advice how to do this commit, some examples and so on. Week 2 and 3, I'm going to give you some tips and tools how to do this. Week 2 and 3, don't drop the ball. Week 4 and 5, make your SWOT, talk to several people. 6 and 7, talk to people on understanding the context. Week 8, make your stakeholder map and take your first action. Week 9, by that time you have a lot of time to think about this one strength, right? But only as week 9 we start talking about actions for going beyond. Then it's several weeks of execution, and then you get feedback from your manager. My personal opinion, I haven't tried yet. It would be great to have a guinea pig group to kind of go through this maze and see what happens after 10, 12 weeks. But I think if some people in my team would be doing this, I'm pretty sure they would have an amazing feedback after 12 weeks. My personal view. And it's something that you build up gradually. You don't start doing everything at once. That's too much. So you start gradually, you do this, then you do this as well, then you do this. So you gradually start, get used to the routine, get your weekly cappuccino, do this routine, gradually build it up, and you will see stuff moving. And the moment that you see stuff moving, you'll be more motivated to do the next one and to do the routine again. So this is it. And again, the difference is you can walk out of this meeting and say, man, it's very interesting, thank you. Tomorrow you go back to your job and you're done. And in 6 weeks you remember, this was an interesting session, no? Or 6 weeks later you can be in step number 4 and already blowing the mind of your manager, no? So it's all about disciplined, executed. All right? So that's it. Where are we on time? Oh, good. Like an hour and 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
So we can quickly do a Q&A.
Questions, remarks, suggestions. Because again, this is my shot, right? Maybe there's a lot of things that you say, I also have an idea, I think this should be in there. Again, this is just about how you